Good evening and welcome. Tonight we're going to be reading some articles out of History Magazine. A couple of quick notes. I am filming this very early in the morning, so our early morning songbird is out if you hear them in the background. It's also around the time that my cat wakes up and starts going nuts. So if that happens, my apologies, or you're welcome. If my cat ever makes an appearance in a video, I put a little black cat emoji in the title. So if you see that, he's gonna cause havoc. If not, then don't worry about it. But most importantly, these articles were chosen by my channel members. These articles tonight were chosen by DR, Marta, and all the happy squirrels. And tonight's theme is ancient cities. As you can see, we're going to talk about Palmyra. And over here I have an article about Tartessos, which is different because it's actually not a city. It's an entire ancient lost region of Spain. But we're actually going to start not too far from Palmyra, actually. We're heading over to the city of Assur. I wonder if that's a place you've ever heard of, because it's not a place I knew of until I read this article. But it's obviously very important because it's where we get the word Assyria, which is where we get the word Syria for the country today. The lost capital of ancient Assyria. Let me bookmark Palmyra so I don't lose it. Put a little pencil right there. The lost capital of ancient Assyria. The key to understanding the ancient city of Assur, also known as Ashur, to Assyrian civilization lies in its name. Assur was the most revered god in Assyria, whose name means land of Assur. In the early days of the Assyrian Empire, Assur was the first capital and the origin of its ruling dynasty. Sited on a crag on the western shore of the Tigris River in what is now Iraq, Assur acted as a vital link for trade between Assyria and Anatolia, today's eastern Turkey. At its peak, around 900 to 600 BCE, Assyria attained the greatest level of military power and bureaucratic organization the world had yet seen. Later, in the Neo-Assyrian Empire, which was from 911 to 609 BCE, Assur's political influence was declining. It was replaced in 879 BCE by a new capital, Kalu, known today as Nimrud. In the 7th century BCE, the Assyrian kingdom was conquered by the Medes and Babylonians. Assur endured for another millennium, occupied in turn by the Persian Empire and later the Parthians. After being sacked by the Sasanian Persians around 240 CE, Assur was left in ruins. Overlooked. In recent centuries, local people knew the ruins of Assur, dominated by a once imposing ziggurat, had been a great city. The site, which today lies in Iraq and is known in Arabic as Kalat Shirkat, was neglected by 19th century archaeologists. You can see the ziggurat up there, what's left of it at least. Despite its pivotal role economically and politically, Assur was less known than cities of equal importance in ancient Greece, Rome, or Egypt, and it was not one of the more familiar cities named in the Bible, such as Babylon or Nineveh. Two pioneers of Mesopotamian archaeology, Austin Henry Layard and Hormuz Rassam, did briefly investigate the site, but they preferred to focus on the more biblically prominent sites of Nineveh and Nimrud. It was not until the beginning of the 20th century that the first systematic excavation of the site was undertaken. The German Orient Society, An archaeological association took a strong interest in Mesopotamia. It sent a mission to Babylon in 1899, led by Robert Koldewey, which I'm definitely pronouncing wrong, but that is what it is. He would bring to light such famous monuments as Babylon's regal Ishtar Gate. Shortly afterward, King Wilhelm II of Prussia, an archaeology enthusiast, reached an agreement with Sultan Abdulhamid II, leader of the Ottoman Empire, who controlled the site at the time. German archaeologists would be permitted to excavate Assur. Koldewey entrusted the to Sir Walter Andre. Sorry if my voice is really clicky, if that bothers you. I know some people love that. I just woke up. Meticulous methods. Born near Leipzig in 1875, Andre trained as an architect. He joined Koldewey's team in Babylon, where he put his draftsman skills to use. As Koldewey's disciple, he learned that the purpose of archaeology was not only to collect objects for display in museums. Above all, it was to understand how past societies functioned, which meant that every object and structure exhumed had to be accurately documented. Koldewey's meticulous methods of planning stood Andre in good stead when he began his work at Assur in 1903. In the 9 years that followed, he and his team of 180 workers managed to dig down to the oldest settlement strata, the power center of the Assyrian state. They uncovered a complex of temples, palaces, and fortifications. The city's temple to the god Assur stood high on a rocky spur to the northeast. The lavishly decorated mud brick building was completed around 1800 BCE. It had 3 courtyards, plus rooms and chapels dedicated to other divinities. In one hard-to-access chamber, archaeologists found the god's room with his statue. According to an inscription by later sovereign Esarhaddon, the walls were once covered with gold. Written in cuneiform on clay tablets, texts found at the site documented several royal palaces in Assur. Andre and his team identified and excavated the 2 principal Assyrian-era palaces: the Old Palace, with ancient foundations embellished by Assur's kings as the city became a regional power, and the New Palace, built in the 13th century BCE by Tukulti-Ninurta I. A 3rd palace excavated by Andre was built much later by the Parthians in the 2nd century CE. In 1912, Andre and his team made an exceptional discovery inside the Old Palace: large hypogaea, underground chambers accessed from the palace by a staircase. These were the royal tombs of Assur, where Assyria's ancient kings were laid to rest. The tombs consisted of a large underground chamber where a huge sarcophagus was placed, sealed with a slab. Much of the hypogaea, like the city as a whole, had been looted by the Medes in 614 BCE, when the Neo-Assyrian kingdom fell. Any gold or valuable grave goods were long gone. Modern threats. The outbreak of World War I in 1914 brought Andre's work in Assur to a halt. In the 1920s, as director of the Museum of the Near East in Berlin, Andre was tasked with recovering and cataloging artifacts from Assur. These had been assigned to Germany in an agreement with the Ottomans. In 1914, the Germany-bound ship carrying the items stopped in Portugal. Although the Portuguese government was officially neutral at the start of World War I, the ship's cargo was seized and held until 1926, when Andre brought the items to Berlin and began this important work. Assur remained unexplored for decades. In 1978, new inquiries were begun, but political upheavals in Iraq, the state that controlled the site, stymied many efforts after 1989. The following years would see a series of ups and downs for the site. In 2003, the ancient city became a UNESCO World Heritage Site. In 2015, ISIS deliberately destroyed Assur's remains, including severely damaging the arches of a historic symbol of the city, the monumental Tabira Gate. In early 2022, a team from Ludwig Maximilian University in Munich, Germany, arrived at Assur to begin an ambitious program of restoration and investigation. Headed by LMU's Karen Rodner and Janoscha Krepner of Münster University, the group has carried out a magnetometric survey to record Assur's features. The excavations will focus on Assur's new town, built in the 9th century BCE. Part of what makes New Town so interesting is that the most recent results show that it existed in the mid-2nd millennium BCE, before Assur was the capital of a major regional power, Rodner explained. Today, a new threat to the site looms in the form of a public works project. Situated 25 miles from Assur, the proposed Makul Dam could drown Assyria's ancient capital. While Assur's future lies in the balance, the team is still at work. We're gathering a lot of samples: charcoal, human teeth, animal bones, and paleobotanical specimens. They're currently being analyzed. The results will help develop a more exact picture of the lives of people in Assur from the mid-2nd millennium BCE to the 7th century CE than has ever been possible. Here's a great photo of, it says an archaeologist, possibly Andre, but who else could that be? Standing over the site, and you can see what's left of the ziggurat right there. That's a great photo, isn't it? We have some artifacts here that I'm sure are in Berlin. Yeah, a beautiful necklace. I would wear this necklace today. It's absolutely gorgeous. We've got a piece of pottery here of a cow doing a kick there or something. A little tiny chariot. It's really cute. Looks very handmade by tiny hands, doesn't it? And this is from the Temple of Ishtar. It's the altar. Yeah. And then down here we can see the god Assur himself. This is cool. This is what we presume the main temple in this area looked like. You can see here is the entrance, which looks a lot like the Ishtar Gate, doesn't it? Except the Ishtar Gate is blue. This was obviously sketched in black and white, and said it's been colorized. But I wonder if it was all painted blue in its heyday, right? Like the Ishtar Gate. We have the courtyard here, and the double ziggurat. This one is for the god Anu, and this one was for the god Adad. And this was a chamber that connected both, that was meant as worship for both deities. Over here is the new palace, which I doubt this is what it looked like back then. I bet this is what it looked like when he sketched this picture, right? And then it notes that over here is the Tigris River. And here's that first photo. Does it say when this was taken? In the 1930s of the city. Here is Andre. It says it's a self-portrait sketch of himself. And then here's a little map to show you where this site is located. You can see it's kind of in north central Iraq. There's Baghdad right there. There's Assur. Let's head over to Palmyra. Very, very famous ancient city. I forgot to mention, since my channel members picked this, if you want to be a channel member, you can click the join button right down there, Or if you're on mobile and you cannot see the join button, you can click the very first link in the description box. It's only 99 US cents a month, the cheapest it can possibly be, and you get all kinds of different perks. So yeah. Let's get into Palmyra. Ancient Palmyra became a thriving cosmopolitan capital of trade thanks to its geography. The city's history stretches back to the 2nd millennium BCE, when inscriptions referred to it by its original name, Tadmor. The city's name would change when it came under Roman influence around 64 BCE. Surrounded by mountains and desert, Tadmor, located some 130 miles northeast of modern Damascus, blossomed atop a lush oasis, complete with groves of palm trees. Both a natural spring, the Efka, and a wadi watered the city, allowing it to grow and become a vital stop along the trade routes between the Mediterranean and Mesopotamia. Caravans met, and people developed innovative styles of art and architecture that reflected multiple cultural influences. Historic methods show Tadmor possessed a cosmopolitan quality from the start. Writers from other places mentioned it, like the great 11th century Syrian king Tiglath-Pileser in his annals. Tadmor appears in works from other ancient Syrian cities such as Mari, which is modern Tal Hariri, and Imar, which is modern Maskana. This quality can be attributed to the city's strategic location and its water supply. Tadmor became known as Palmyra when it came under Roman influence in the mid-1st century BCE. Syria had become a colony of Rome in 64 BCE, but Palmyra remained independent. In the next 3 centuries, the city would reach its peak, and some 200,000 people would call it home. As wealth poured into the city, monumental architecture rose to the sky. Like Palmyra itself, the architecture bore influences of the many cultures that moved through the city as artistic, spiritual, and linguistic traditions met and meshed. For the next 2 centuries, Palmyra was one of the most prosperous trading centers in the ancient world. Caravans on their way. Palmyra's lingua franca was Aramaic, a Semitic language spoken across the ancient world. Archaeologists have found 2 systems of writing being employed. One is a monumental script, and the other a Mesopotamian cursive, showing influences from both the Mediterranean and Mesopotamian worlds. The Tariff of Palmyra, discovered in 1881, wonderfully showcases the dual influences. The stone tablet is written in Greek and Aramaic and lists the taxes due on different imports and exports. The tariff dates to the time of Emperor Hadrian, around 137 CE, when Palmyra sat between the Roman Empire of the West and Parthian Empire of the East. More than 40 inscriptions discovered in the city reveal both the organization and extent of Palmyra's trade. The Palmyrines exchanged goods not only with Rome and Egypt to the west, but also with Mesopotamia, India, and China to the east. As the main stop of the great trading route between the Mediterranean and Asia, Palmyra drew its wealth from the caravan trade in spices, silks, works of art, and other goods. Typically, the city relied on 2 great annual expeditions, one in early spring and the other in autumn, between the Persian capital and the Persian Gulf. As they made their way across the punishing desert, trading caravans faced another danger besides the harsh elements: bandits. Inscriptions warned that bands of thieves would steal goods to sell at their own emporiums. Some texts record the names of the Bedouin ringleaders who were heads of the notorious raiding gangs, as well as the places where they would lie in wait for caravans to pass. the Palmyrines hit back with their own rapid response forces. Merchants whose goods were being transported paid locals who knew the desert and could offer protection against bandit attacks. Getting a caravan and its cargo across the perilous desert intact took months of preparation. Prominent merchants would come together to negotiate a joint expedition. They procured camels from the desert nomads and cajoled the nomads to their side to help avoid bandit attacks. Even so, a caravan traveled with its own armed militia, commanded by a trusted and experienced warlord. Divine blessings. Palmyra's esteem of trade was reflected in its religious beliefs and practices. It seems that the Palmyrines' relationship with their gods was similar to an exchange of goods. According to some inscriptions, being honest and shrewd in business was a great virtue. So those who excelled in organizing and defending caravans became an example of morality and piety. Their statues occupied a prominent place in the city's temples. For example, in the great colonnade that runs through the city, a statue was erected in honor of Julius Aurelius Zenobius. Inscriptions recorded that he had been commander at the time of arrival of the divine Alexander, and overseer also of the distribution of corn, a liberal man, not sparing even of his own private property, and conducting his public service with distinction, so that he has been blessed by the god Yarhibul and by Julius Priscus, the most illustrious prefect and sacred praetor. It's a nice way to be remembered in history, isn't it? When people turned to the divinities, it was generally to ask for material or economic benefits, to give thanks for those already received. Cult practice was built around trying to secure favorable trading conditions from the gods, often within a family context. Numerous funerary reliefs and sculptures have been discovered, in which the deceased are represented in their prime and dressed in their best clothes. The tombs in Palmyra's cemeteries are richly decorated with sculptures of the deceased. These moving works of art blend Greco-Roman realism with Parthian influences in fashion. Divine deities. Palmyrine cosmology was also multicultural, drawing on the faiths of the different peoples who came to the city. In the Palmyrine pantheon, the supreme god was Bel, probably called Bol in the local language. Originally, Bel was a protective divinity of the oasis and took on attributes of the Greek god Zeus. His main temple complex in the city was very similar in shape and layout to the Hebrew temple in Jerusalem. Palmyra's religion was not monotheistic like that of Yahweh. There were many deities, some local and some from other cultures. Along with Bel, and forming a kind of supreme triad, were Yarhibal and Aglibal, a moon god native to northern Syria. Baal-Shamin, lord of the skies, was of Phoenician origin, and Atargatis, goddess of fertility, came from the Syro-Phoenician area. Besides Zeus, other Greek gods and heroes such as Hercules and Nemesis were assimilated, as were gods from Mesopotamia, North Africa, and nomadic Arab cultures. Standing at the crossroads where gods, peoples, and languages met, Palmyra enjoyed more cultural diversity than almost anywhere in the ancient world. In this thriving oasis, people from different places with very different traditions succeeded in co-creating a culture based on pragmatism and a passion for trade, accepting one another and their gods. Protecting the past. Palmyra diminished in importance after a 3rd century rebellion led by Palmyrine queen Zenobia destroyed the city. Which I hope someday there's an article about her because she was such a fascinating character. It was rebuilt but never recaptured its former glory. As the city declined, its monuments and buildings fell into ruin. The grandeur of Bel's great temple and that of Baal-Shaman kept them in use. Both became churches. The Temple of Bel became a mosque in the 12th century. The world's attention returned to Palmyra in the 18th century, when visiting scholars published detailed drawings of its gorgeous architecture. Excavations began in earnest in the 20th century, as archaeologists descended on the site to explore its ancient wonders. Palmyra proved invaluable in studying the economic and cultural interactions of the world in the first 300 years of the Roman Empire, and it became a UNESCO World Heritage Site in 1980. The world's attention was drawn back to Palmyra during the Syrian Civil War, when ISIS seized it in May 2015. Control would change hands several times, but Syria ultimately regained possession in 2017. By then, ISIS had damaged the Roman theater, destroyed the Bel and Baal-Shaman temples, and looted treasures from the city. Syrian officials have pledged to restore what was lost in the hopes that the world can again experience one of history's first multicultural centers. Let's take a look at this page real quick to see some portraits, which are really kind of quaint. Look at this guy here. Why is his head like so much bigger than his body? It's so cute. Actually, it's a her. It's a girl holding a branch and a bird on a children's tombstone. I should be more respectful. Someone else holding a bird and his brother's arm, it says. A stylish woman here. And down here we have a little camel caravan and some horses running. And look how Roman this looks. So interesting. And then look at this guy. The little camel in the background. I love how, like, each one of these looks so different. I'm sure it's because they were made by different people. But, like, this looks Roman. This looks kind of Greek. This looks really Greek, but, like, ancient Greek. And these look like something I've never seen in the ancient world. They're so detailed. So interesting, but I assume that's those cultures clashing, right? This looks almost Egyptian in that, like, processional style. Here we have some gods. This is Aglabal, god of the moon. This is Baal-Shaman, lord of the skies. And this is Malak Bel, a sun god. Very detailed, too. And look at their costumes. It's incredible. This is an altar here with a prayer on it, and it mentions down here that they never actually say the god's name. Which maybe that's on purpose, you know. Here is the Temple of Bel, how it would have looked. Let's see, we have a little head here. This says it's in the Louvre. But here we can see, let's see. The wall topped with triangular stepped merlons, standing 50 feet tall at its highest point. On the other side is the sacred enclosure, big courtyard, right? Then let's see, number 3 right here. This is for, what does it say? This is for animal sacrifices, and this is for ablutions for the priests. And this is Bel's sanctuary, which we can see a better close-up of here. This is how it looked in 2009. So it says, all that remains is the gateway, and ISIS destroyed the rest of the temple. But this used to look like that, right? Very sad that that's all gone. But I know that there are archaeologists trying to rebuild what was destroyed because all the rubble was just left. So they're trying to piece it back together. And I know they have done to some parts of the site. Here we've got a little map. You can see that's where Palmyra is in the grand scheme of things. There's Rome over there. The Roman Empire is in purple. The Parthians is in orange. It's right at the crossroads there. And then Up close we can see there's Palmyra / Tartessos, there's Damascus, and other ancient sites like Mari. So here's what the whole city most likely looked like. Here we have the Temple of Bel, which we already looked at. This arch, which remember that because we're going to look at a photo of it next. Look at this road. It's like a freeway, right? How amazing. This is the Temple of Nabu, which was a Babylonian god of writing. Here's the theater. Over here it says is the Senate, but we can't really see it, so I assume it's like right next to the theater. And here's the Agora. This is the little like central area where the roads meet. It's called the Tetrapylon. And way over here is the Temple of Baal Shaman. You can see a big wall around it. We can see the oasis over here along the river, the Wadi, right? Here's the oasis near the city. There's an eagle sacred to Baal Shaman. And then this is that arch I told you to remember. So this was along that ancient road. And the arch was destroyed by ISIS, they said, which is very, very sad. I'm pretty sure these columns are still standing because I've seen videos about Palmyra, and I'm pretty sure I've seen these columns still intact. Or maybe they've been rebuilt, I'm not sure, because I know that columns are obviously the easiest things to put back together. But that is Palmyra. Let's head over to our last article about Tartessos, which I wonder if anyone's heard of Tartessos before. This is a Phoenician colony. Let me just toss this magazine down. There we go. And of course we'll look at the pictures after. Let's read about it first. To this day, historians can't fully explain the mysterious disappearance of the thriving ancient society. Thriving and ancient is thrivant. The thriving ancient society of Tartessos. New questions arise as excavations reveal more about the advanced multicultural civilization that seemingly vanished overnight. Rising to power along the southern coast of the Iberian Peninsula, Tartessos is believed to have strong ties to a group of seafaring traders, the Phoenicians, who first arrived in the Iberian Peninsula in the 10th century BCE. They originally hailed from modern-day Lebanon, Syria, and northern Israel, and were known across the Mediterranean as skilled sailors and expert merchants. Given the name Phoenician by the Greeks for the exquisite purple dye they crafted, they never created a unified kingdom. Tartessos is believed to be the resulting outgrowth of Phoenician culture, combined with the indigenous culture of peoples living on the Iberian Peninsula. Some scholars still believe that Tartessos itself could predate these Phoenician influences, and new discoveries continue to fuel the debate. Legends of Tartessos. Tales of Tartessos stretch all the way back to the mid-7th century BCE. A Greek trader named Coleus set sail from his home island of Samos, off the coast of present-day Turkey. He was headed for Egypt, but during the voyage, Coleus's ship was surprised by strong winds from the east that pushed it westward across the Mediterranean, beyond the Pillars of Hercules and into the Strait of Gibraltar. That's a long way. Coleus and his fellow sailors arrived in Tartessos, a commercial emporium previously unknown to merchants from Greece. Coleus began to trade with the Tartessians and turned a large profit, mainly thanks to the silver, over 1.75 tons, that he amassed there. This traveler's tale is found in Greek historian Herodotus's Histories, written in the 5th century BCE. And although the narrative is no doubt embellished, Herodotus did live for a time in Samos, where he may have heard of Calais' adventure. Other classical texts also contain references to a town called Tartessos in the lands around the Gulf of Cadiz in the southern Iberian Peninsula. From these mentions, historians and archaeologists are working to build up a picture of this enigmatic civilization steeped in legends. Tartessos' beginning. One of the most controversial issues has been when Tartessos was founded. Until the late 20th century, most experts believed that Tartessos emerged as far back as the Bronze Age. The culture was thought to have spread over a large area in the southwestern Iberian Peninsula between the settlements of Huelva, Seville, and Cadiz, the Tartessian core. If so, Tartessos would have existed even before the first Phoenician colonies were established in the 10th and 9th centuries BCE. However, as archaeological excavations continue, this hypothesis seems increasingly unlikely. Although some authors speak of a period called the Tartessian Late Bronze Age, there is little strong evidence to support the existence of a defined settlement in the southwestern peninsula during the 12th and 11th centuries BCE. What may have existed was an emerging social organization based on agriculture and the export of raw materials from mining. Archaeologists have found evidence of a community at nearby Huelva during this period. Artifacts unearthed at the site and elsewhere suggest that the community was skilled in trading with the Atlantic world. Objects made of copper from Huelva have been found as far away as France and the British Isles. The well-established trading links would have helped them profit from the abundant silver mines in the area, such as those in Anzalcolar, northwest of modern-day Seville, or Seville, as they say. Phoenicians in Iberia. These early trading communities around the Gulf of Cadiz experienced a profound transformation with the arrival of the Phoenicians. It was in the 9th century BCE that traders from the flourishing cities of the eastern Mediterranean settled permanently in the southwest of the Iberian Peninsula. Phoenician colonizers started by building temples to their gods along the coast. These religious complexes not only served spiritual purposes, they also played a key role in commerce by providing a neutral space for trading. The Temple of Melkart, or Hercules, near Cadiz seems to have had this dual purpose. Very soon the Phoenicians built permanent establishments called factories, and later the first colonies. One of these new city colonies, Cadiz, would become the most important economic, political, and religious center in the region. It served as the main port for exporting silver, tin, and salted fish. These mining and agricultural products came both from Huelva itself and from inland. The Phoenicians brought innovations to the areas they settled. Iron, hybrid animals such as the mule, plant species like grapevines and olive trees, the potter's wheel, and ceramic kilns. They also introduced the alphabet, an essential element for trade. Even the architecture would be influenced. The Phoenicians favored orthogonal structures with right angles, which generated a much more complex urban layout. Over the course of the 9th and 8th centuries BCE, these things would transform the economy and way of life of the local peoples. During this initial period of colonization, local Iberian communities gradually adapted to the presence of the eastern settlers. Archaeologists are looking for more insight as to how this integration developed, but it seems likely that people migrated from inland regions to the coastal colonies. The workforce swelled. Miners and farmers arrived, as well as the artisans and construction workers needed for the new cities, temples, and communication routes. In the Guadiana and Tagus valleys, the dominant warrior elite may have supplied labor in exchange for access to the Phoenicians' iron and technical innovations. In these inland areas, local traders would have provided gold, tin, and agricultural products to the Phoenicians. Although the Phoenicians had a huge impact on the colonized territories of the Iberian Peninsula, the changes were experienced unevenly. In sparsely populated areas such as the Guadalquivir Valley and the Bay of Cadiz, the incoming Phoenicians were able to found their own cities and incorporate the indigenous population. In Huelva, a more established economy and defined social structure already existed, rendering Phoenician influence weaker. It was in the 8th century BCE that interactions between the Phoenicians, the indigenous communities, and the populations of the interior gave rise to the culture now termed Tartessian. The word Tartessos first appears in Greek sources in the following century. Archaeological evidence. Contact between Phoenician colonists and indigenous people of the peninsula sparked remarkable economic development with work for potters, goldsmiths, blacksmiths, builders, stevedores, and sailors. Maritime trade defined the society. It was labor-intensive, involving many workers to fell trees, build ships, and create vessels such as amphorae to move the goods. These changes likely caused tensions between the Tartessian communities, who found themselves enjoying new, lucrative relations with the Phoenicians and other indigenous interior communities, who also sought to control the new economic resources. Tartessian culture saw an emergence of new social groups and a much more complex social organization. The society lasted some 400 years. How elites maintained control is not clear. Neither Tartessian sites nor tombs provide evidence of much weaponry. Although Tartessos had some notable cultural traits, it wasn't a homogeneous society and shouldn't be considered a united kingdom, let alone an empire. Herodotus does mention a kingdom ruled by Arganthonios, but is referring to a chief within what the Greeks called Tartessos. There would have been other kings or leaders, with each ruler maintaining their political independence despite interconnected economic interests. This social structure was more heterarchical than hierarchical, involving various leaders and a network of power. Mixed marriages between indigenous people and Phoenicians consolidated the integration of the two communities. This practice would explain the discoveries made in inland areas far removed from the Tartessian nucleus, such as the treasures of Aliceida and Talavera, both in Cáceres, and the tomb of Casa del Carpio, Toledo, Carpio, okay. Toledo today. Much of the rich hoards found at these sites came from local workshops and were produced by artisans trained in Phoenician goldsmithing techniques. The pieces include many motifs of the Phoenician religion, with representations of the gods El, Baal, and Astarte. In Extremadura and the Tagus Valley, archaeologists have found mixed trousseau in necropolises of the Tartessian nucleus, such as Las Cumbres in El Puerto de Santa Maria, which is in Cadiz today. They feature both indigenous and Phoenician elements. Recently, large adobe constructions were uncovered beneath a tumulus by the Guadiana River, providing more evidence of Tartessian culture and architecture mixing with Phoenician influences. The Casas del Toruñuelo sites in Guareña, which is in Badajoz, which was used until the late 5th century BCE, includes the best preserved proto-historic buildings in the Western Mediterranean. The banqueting hall is complete with bronze vessels. Ongoing excavations confirm the structure is characteristic of the early Tartessian culture that emerged in the 8th century BCE from the interactions with Phoenician colonizers. The culture left a much deeper and more extensive mark than previously thought. After a period of prosperity during the 7th century BCE, Tartessos fell into decline. Until quite recently, archaeologists believed that Tartessian culture came to an abrupt end in the 6th century BCE. But the latest findings in the Guadiana Valley show that after this period of decline in the Tartessian core, the culture itself continued to spread to some inland territories. Investigation into Tartessos continues with new discoveries sure to illuminate the mysteries of this Bronze Age culture. Here is the treasure of Aliseda in Cáceres. These are currently in Madrid. And we can see some beautiful bangles here. A headband. That's awesome. This is an earring. Look how detailed that is for an earring. We have some Phoenician deities on these. Little pendants. Oh, sorry, it's a ring. That's a swivel ring. Oh my goodness, how amazing. Here's a belt. Just a gold belt. Can you imagine? These rings are incredible. This is jasper. This is, doesn't say, but maybe an amethyst. This looks like amber, maybe. And then look at this little, looks like a cartouche here. An Egyptian themed little guy here. What is this? Nile scene in a gold ring's flat surface. Incredible. I see there's the little ring part of the ring. That's incredible. I love these rings. That's so cool. Here we have a horse hecatomb, which they think was most likely for sacrifices, right? Or else would you have a bunch of dead horses lying there? Here's one of these adobe houses, and this is crazy because this looks like it could be in like New Mexico or southern Arizona today as like modern architecture. This looks like someone's house today that was built like a year ago, but it was built ancient. This is in Casas del Turniello. There's some feet. It says they've never found the rest. The sanctuary of El Carambolo. This is where a treasure was found in 1958. Let's see what we've got here. This room was dedicated to the cult of Astarte, which I believe is a Celtic goddess. This is for Baal, which would have been a Phoenician god. And that's all it notes. There's a little zoom in here of this area, which I guess is the outside part for Baal. Maybe like a mosque, you have the outside prayer and the inside prayer. Very cool. Some writing here. Wow, can you see the little scratches? That's so cool. Wow. This is near Cadiz, the coastline here. We've got some more jewelry done here. I'm obsessed. Look at this. This is a necklace. That's amazing. I love this jewelry. And look at this. A jug with a deer's head. That's amazing. Let's see. This is the Guadalquivir River in southern Spain, which we can see a map of here. This is in Andalusia today. There's Cadiz, there's Seville, there's Huelva, and there's El Carambolo. You can see the site there. So this was the heartland. This was that core, that nucleus they talked about. But evidence of it spread all the way out here into what's now Portugal and the interior of Spain, where the rain stays mainly. And then we have Astarte here. Some more of this incredible Phoenician writing, which you can see some people here. Can you see? That's awesome. And another gorgeous little necklace here. Love it. Their jewelry was the best. But that's all that I have for you today. So thank you so much for watching. If you enjoyed this style of content, please consider subscribing. I'm actually going to have another article for you next week. So be sure to subscribe so you won't miss out. I hope that you found this video to be relaxing and educational. And I hope that you have a good night. Not me, the sun's already rising. It's quite, oh, the sun is pretty much up now. Well, good night.